conducting quite a few programs with us. So for those who don't know him, I'll just give you a brief introduction. So TD is an alumnus of IIT Delhi and XLRI, and he has more than 20 years of general management experience in India, US and Southeast Asia, working in areas like corporate and strategic planning, management consulting, change management and organization development. Chandrasekhar's last corporate role was as head of Ameriprise India, which he set up for the parent organization, and he scaled it up and ran it successfully for a few years. And prior to Ameriprise, he handled a large consulting team for Ameriprise in the USA, and he started his career in strategic planning in NIIT before he joined Pricewaterhouse. An expert facilitator, Chandrasekhar has trained and led workshops and done coaching for middle and senior management teams across reputed MNCs and Indian businesses. And he is specially interested in the area of decision making and innovative thinking, and has conducted senior management programs on topics like strategic thinking, creativity and problem solving. Currently, Chandrasekhar is a consultant for capacity building programs for the central government in India, and is a lead consultant for Harvard Business Scholarship. So please welcome Mr. T. Chandrasekhar.
Close it. All of you just put your cell phones on silent. Silent, because this session would require that. We'll have some. Yes, already done? Okay, good. Okay, thanks. This is an interesting topic. All of you have heard of neuroscience? Yes, no? Yes? Every day in the newspapers you read articles on neuroscience? Yes, no? Yes? Everybody needs coffee, tea, what? Yeah? Okay, so this talk is about neuroscience and leadership. So neuroscience is a science of the brain, and is it relevant to leadership? Yes or no? And answer seems to be a big yes, and this talk is about that. How as senior leaders, all of us should I think have a better understanding of what neuroscience is all about. And hopefully by end of the session, you would have a little more appreciation of that fact. And I want everybody to have paper and pencil ready. Yeah, paper and pen or pencil, whatever. Ready? So that you can take notes. It will help you have a talk sheet for your test also in the end, right? Okay. So neuroscience and leadership. Neuroscience is the study of our brain. Brain science, how our brain works. And the definition is, how do we understand, how do we emote, how do we behave. And leadership is all about how do we get things done. As senior IT managers, your entire task is to help your teams get things done in your office, in organizations, etc., etc. So how do they both link up? So before that, let's look at neuroscience and 4 inspirations for this session. All these names are legendary. I would like you to note these names. Especially first is Camillo Golgi. This guy was the first guy. Apparently we know only in the last 100 years have we started to get to even know a bit about our human brain. 120 years back we had no clue what our brain was composed of. It was one big lump. We were crossing continents, we were inventing a lot of stuff, we invented gunpowder, we invented even, but our basic understanding of human brain was next to nothing. When we looked at a human brain, it was a lump on the table. Only post-mortem, you would take out a lump and you had no understanding, you could not see anything beyond that lump. And Camillo Golgi was the first person, and the thing you see there, the stain, is called the Golgi stain. He was the first person, and this some animal he took, small snail or something. First person who said that actually that lump is composed of something like threads. And this was a stain, and it was a revolutionary finding that time. That it's not just one lump like lump of wheat, but it's some threads out there. The second person who is called the father of neuroscience is Emmanuel Kayal. He is a genius. He is almost like a saint, worshipped in neuroscience. And he was the first person who said that this entire network There's a very intricate network out there in the brain. It's not a lump. It's a very intelligent network of wiring beyond belief. And he used to spend 20 hours a day non-stop in peering through microscopes and detailing out the diagrams of that network. His network diagrams are even today studied at neuroscience labs. That's the remarkable work he did, and both of them won the Nobel Prize in 1906 for understanding, giving us huge progress in understanding what the brain is composed of. This lady, Martha Farah, is a Walter Annenberg Professor in Neuroscience in University of Pennsylvania. Again, a great lady, and the reason she is an inspiration is that I attended her workshops on neuroscience in University of Pennsylvania. Outstanding lady. Eric Kandel is, this name I definitely want you to write down. Eric Kandel is a 2000 winner of Nobel Prize in Medicine. He is an outstanding genius, and he has done the most amount of work in how our brain learns. Whenever we learn something, something is happening in our brain. Some neural chemistry has changed, some things have happened in the brain. It's like you are IT guys, you know that. If we insert some software, somewhere some memory has shifted in that computer. Our brain is a natural computer. If suppose you hear some fact, you remember, you go out of the room, something somewhere in the brain should have changed, some memory should have changed. So this is the person who has done amazing work that in that field, and he's written a book called In Search of Memory. I would strongly urge you to read if you like reading. Otherwise, there are a lot of talks on YouTube, etc. So the stars of today's talk. The stars of today's talk are, there are two stars for today's talk. One is all of us, all our brains here. In this room there are 100 brains, I think. Yeah, all of our brains are stars of today's talk. This is a marvelous equipment we have. Evolution has taken millions of years to create what we have. It's intricate beyond belief. The more you start reading about our brain, you are astounded as to the complexity nature has built in. It's artificial or whatever, intelligence beyond belief. And the second is our friend, the rat. The rat brain is unbelievably close to, it's bad for our ego, but rat brain is unbelievably close to our brain. It almost mimics everything our brain does. And we do a little more complicated stuff, but rat is a good example of a brain we can study and learn a lot about ourselves. Because in our labs we can't cut apart, we can't do experiments with our brains. We can't ask you, please come to the lab here, let me try out this electrode and push you. But we can do with our friend the rat and rat brains. So these are the two stars for today's workshop. Our brain structure looks a lot like walnut. Yes or no? Yeah, and there's a reason, it's biophysics. Our brain structure is like a putty, and if you enclose it in a hard shell, then it's forced to curl. And that's exactly what happens with walnut also. So our brain is enclosed in a very hard shell called the skull. And as evolution grew more and more complex, grew our brain, made more and more complex, and it decreased in size, it had to fit into that skull. Otherwise the skull had to increase, etc., etc. So so when the evolution, the soft thing curled around and became the shape which we have called our brain. And very close to the principles in biophysics as to why the walnut shape is like our brain. Similar principles are in place, it's no coincidence. Okay, this is our brain, this is a real brain in the lab. This is how our brain looks. And 100 years back, this was the only view had of our brain. That is, on the table we had this lump. We had no clue how beautiful it was, how intricate it was. This was the only thing we had on the table. Just 100 years back, we had only this much of knowledge of our brain. Now, every single day we are learning more and more about our brain. In fact, Eric Kandel says that in the last 100 years, whatever we learned about our brain, we put it on one table, and we put on the other table what we have learned in the last 5 years. Which table will be heavier? Last 5 years. And it's exponential, that's what the exponential function is. And next 5 years will be even more, etc., etc. And a lot of reasons why this is happening. But all said and done, that does not reduce the magic that this is a wondrous equipment all of us have. And so why neuroscience now? Why is neuroscience suddenly coming into prominence now? Every single day you read in newspapers something or other about neuroscience. Every single magazine, even tabloids now cover neuroscience. And why is it happening now? Because it's a nascent field, and in any nascent field, all kinds of things start getting reported. Some true, some not true. So let's look at why neuroscience now. There are three reasons why it's happening. One is explosion in technology and tools. Explosion, like in any field. There are now tools available which are so sophisticated that we can peer into that mass of jelly, what we call a wetware. So we can peer into it in a very deep, precise way. So that allows scientists to go in and peer into the brain. And the technology and tools not only allow, earlier it was post-mortem. You put a brain on the table after the death of the patient and try to analyze why was this guy acting strange, why was his brain not functioning well. Now in real time, in a non-invasive way, I can peer into your brain. Remarkable stuff is happening. And I'll just explain to you each of these points. Second is multifaceted engagement in brain science. People across domains are now getting into it. There are mathematicians who do data mining, big data. Brain spews out a lot of data. Then there are chemists, there are biologists, there are physicists, there are electronics engineers, there are computer science. All kinds of people are entering. Chemists, etc. Cognitive scientists, psychoanalysts. Any brain science lab in the world now in MIT, Harvard, etc. will have people from all domains, even legal experts sometimes, etc. Because there are a lot of ethical implications about brain. The more we are learning something sometimes very surprising stuff. So how much do we intrude into privacy of people, etc. Third is, because of this explosion in interest and support, there are real world implications now. Like governments are pumping money. How can we make brain sharper? How can we make the brain not sleep? Like for example, US military funds a lot of money into how can we make soldiers sleep 2 hours less, etc. etc. Lot of money is being pumped into brain science. And even companies like Google, etc. are funding a lot of money because they believe that that will be a huge competitive advantage for us. For any trial which cracks some of the issues. Like can we have artificial stimulants which make us very sharp? Except just like we run fast. Brain science is proving to us that it's exactly analogous to what happens in our physical world. Just like when we run, we can run faster by using some whatever methods. We can think faster, we can think better also. So that's it's becoming a science now. So let's look at each of these. So modern technology, all of you have heard about PET scan, CAT scan, etc. etc. So modern technology, MRI is the instrument, and increasingly advanced MRI getting built, which are stronger and stronger. These are called Tesla. Tesla is the magnetic field. So 7 Tesla, 10 Tesla, some of the labs are 15 Tesla. They're very expensive machines. But what they allow us to do is peer into the structure of the brain as never before. One of the things which is creating waves, all kinds of articles you read now in newspapers called the brain imaging, what they usually talk about is something called BOLD fMRI. Just write this down, functional magnetic resonance imaging. And BOLD means blood oxygenated level detection. So how much of our brain is like any other organ? Like if I tell you that this person is now walking faster, it ipso facto implies that his heart is pumping faster, yes or no? Guarantee 100% correlation. You can't have a person walking faster and heart not pumping faster. The plumbing has to work faster. Similarly, if I say this person has started to now think more, his neurons are firing more. Neurons are the basic cell parts of your brain. They are firing more. It's as physical as that. So this allows us to do that. This fMRI is functional magnetic resonance imaging. These are special kinds of MRIs. These are functional MRIs where they tap into the fact that whenever somebody is thinking or using some part of the brain, those neurons are firing more. Yes or no? Brain has different parts. Some parts sense, some parts think, some parts emote, some parts. There are lots of parts. As soon as you are doing something, for example, you are seeing something and you are liking something, parts of the brain which are seeing have to work harder. Yes or no? And there oxygen goes in. As soon as oxygen goes in, oxygen's magnetic properties are different. Oxygenated blood's magnetic properties are different, and these capture that. So that allows you on the screen to see which parts of the brain are active. This has completely revolutionized the field. Non-invasive. So you can put a guy on the scanner and give him some mathematical problems and see which part of the brain is getting activated. You can see if somebody is getting the aha, we'll come to that later, some creative idea, which part of the brain gets lighted. If somebody is getting angry, which part of the brain is getting lighted, etc., etc. So you can peer into the brain now in real time, and the person can respond. I am feeling angry. So you can see on the screen. So there's an excellent series in YouTube called the two-part PBS series with Alan Alda. He was in MASH earlier, long back. You can just note down. So I've just taken a one-minute clip from him where he shows, and these are all latest. All we are talking about is what's happening right now. This is a very nascent science. Every single day we are seeing progress happening. This is not a dated thing. So let me show you one small snippet of what he says fMRI. This is last week's program.
Oh, as the questions are projected onto a screen above my face. While I'm in the scanner, you get the pleasure of seeing my brain revealed. This is a structural scan. But once the questions start coming, the machine will be making repeated scans to see how different parts of my brain are responding as I answer. This type of brain scan is called a functional MRI, and it's the key technology we'll be encountering as we explore how neuroscientists are probing brains. The scanner creates images of multiple slices through the brain, picking out regions where a cluster of nerve cells, among the several billion in the brain, is working especially hard. Harder working cells need more blood to fuel them. This extra blood flowing through the nest of capillaries surrounding the nerve cells generates a magnetic signal. And it's this signal, an indirect measure of nerve cell activity, that the fMRI machine detects and displays. It took Steve Lakin about an hour using his patented computer algorithms to figure out where the blood was flowing most in my brain while I was answering those seemingly endless questions about rings and watches. So I hear.
Yeah. So extremely powerful, extremely powerful. Imagine, you can peer into the head. Now we have reached the stage in the labs, for example, 100% right now. I can ask you, I can give you the choices of questions which they are asking, A or B. If the answer is A, think of a face. If the answer is B, think of a place. And I am in the other room, I can figure out what you have thought. Whether you have thought of a face or you have thought of a place. They are finding out coma, earlier coma was considered coma. Now they are finding out grades of coma. There is a coma called the state of comatose victims. That state is called locked-in syndrome. Locked-in syndrome means that the guy is practically dead. He's dead. But when you start asking questions, can you hear this? What I am saying? If you can hear, please think of a face. Instantly the face things lights up. 1 out of 1,000 of these coma patients. So it has a lot of implications. That means that that person is still in some way alive and responding to you. So amazing ethical implications and legal implications, etc. This is no longer science fiction. And this is going to affect our brain, affect our lives in all spheres. Till a decade back, we did not even have a nomenclature for the brain. Every scientist, very few scientists were there, every scientist was giving parts of the brain their own name. Each one was cutting the brain into their own parts. Now, because it's becoming a science, everybody has to pull in and say, how do we create an atlas of this brain? It's like going into a new universe. So, Today we are becoming so precise, even for example, earlier if there was a brain damage and you had to operate on someone, you just blast the medicine in that area, some area. For example, very crudely we knew that this part of the brain is used in vision. So if somebody's vision is getting a tumor or some tumor, if you have to do some medical intervention there, you would operate in a it's almost like a crude way. The surgeon will operate, pull out that part, etc. And you might lose a lot of other abilities. Any single part, by mistake you cut some other part and you did not even know what you were doing. But today's world, this is real. This is just out of the labs and coming into leading hospitals in US. And this is real. This is not science fiction. Let me share what's happening.
ClearPoint is an integrated system of software, disposable components, and reusable hardware. The software runs on the ClearPoint workstation and is used for the planning, targeting, and delivery of the neurological intervention. The disposable components are built around the SmartFrame trajectory guide. The reusable hardware components include the head coil and integrated head fixation frame. The ClearPoint procedure is performed in a standard 1.5D MRI suite. The patient's head rests inside the MRI intervention's head coil and fixation frame. The MRI intervention's smart grid is applied to the head, and the patient is then advanced to ISO-center to begin the procedure. The MRI scanner begins collecting high-resolution images of the patient's anatomy. These images are shipped in DICOM format to the ClearPoint workstation and presented to the physician. From these high-resolution images, the physician can see and select the neurological target, which in this case is the left subthalamic nucleus. Once the target is selected, the surgeon uses the ClearPoint software to find an optimal trajectory path from the surface of the skull down to the target. The software simplifies this process by visualizing critical structures that need to be avoided, such as blood vessels, sulci, and the ventricles. The entry point of the planned trajectory is identified on the patient via the smart grid. The ClearPoint software recognizes where the planned trajectory passes through the MR Visible smart grid and identifies the specific coordinates to the physician. In this example, the coordinates are CD4. The top layer of the smart grid is then peeled back, and the coordinates are used to guide the surgeon in marking the location of the entry point in the patient's skull. After a small burrow has been created, the surgeon affixes the base portion of the smart frame to the patient's skull. The tower of the smart frame is then attached to the base. The color-coded hand controller is then attached to the tower. With the smart frame attached, high-resolution images are then reacquired and presented to the physician to reconfirm the location of the neurological target and the optimal trajectory, and to take into account any potential brain shift that may have occurred. With the smart frame and patient anatomy in a common 3D imaging and surgical space, the interventional portion of the procedure is simple. The ClearPoint system is aware of both the planned trajectory and the smart frame trajectory. The software then guides the surgeon in the adjustment of the smart frame controls, in this case, adjusting and observing the roll of the smart frame by turning the red knob to the right, and then adjusting and observing the pitch of the smart frame by turning the blue knob to the right. A precision adjustment is then performed with the yellow X and green Y knobs to complete the alignment. With the smart frame now properly aligned, the surgeon can insert the interventional device through the center lumen in the trajectory frame. As the device is advanced, the surgeon observes real-time images to verify that no undesirable events have taken place, such as hemorrhage, and to confirm that the desired neurological target has been reached.
It's amazing. So you pinpoint, you are going into the brain. It's out of the world, what all they are doing now. And this is a recent article which came in the newspapers, which talks about human-to-human interface. I don't know how many of you read this. Human-to-human interface done in the US labs, where this guy here is actually, by coincidence, is an Indian. This guy lifts his finger. Not only lifts, they have tried it out also about thinking of lifting his finger. He thinks of lifting his finger. Other person can be sitting end of the world here, another part of the world. And that person is sitting and suddenly his finger twitches. His finger twitches. You are twitching you are pushing your right arm, and suddenly that guy's right arm twitches. Exactly, same location. Is it magic? It's not, because what's happening is they have figured out exactly how our brain works. For example, what's happening here is the following, and this is the University of Pennsylvania labs where I saw the demo. What's happening is the following. We have only figured out maybe 3 or 4% of our brain, but we have figured out some things very well. For example, we know exactly the motor functions. Each and every part of the brain is mapped. Each and every part of our body is mapped in the brain. That's how it controls, like any software. So we know exactly what part of the brain, let's assume, we know which moves the neurons which move this finger. So suppose I think or I move this finger, those parts of those neurons fire. If I can detect, and firing is all electrical signal. As soon as I move these fire, if these fire, the electrodes or some observational units here figure out that it's fired, that information goes to the other person's helmet. In other person's helmet, you exactly know which neurons of his are being used to control his finger. There, they zap a magnetic field exactly on those neurons. And we know electronics means that if you have a moving magnetic field, it creates electric field. If you are moving electric, it creates a magnetic. So as soon as you put a magnetic pulse, it creates electrical impulse in this very neurons which move his finger. So you have a complete circuit. Complete non-invasive, nothing happens, because these are very less, but it's good questions. They are trying to, but apparently nothing happens till now at least. But the fact is, it's almost pure magic if you see that. That somebody across the world is moving his finger and you are moving his finger. In fact, they demonstrated to us. All of us tried this out where they zapped something here and our fingers started twitching. We have no control. You have bypassed all your conscious thing. You have just gone to the wires, because muscles are nothing but nylon wires and they are getting instructions from the neurons. And the neurons are saying, now lift the finger. And it's bizarre. You see your fingers are twitching now. Just because somebody's put a magnetic pulse exactly. And similarly, you can put a magnetic pulse while I'm talking, suddenly voice will not come. Because all the cords, muscles are not active, or I can start saying something which I have not thought, etc., etc. Lot of bizarre things, meaning that much of control we are getting in neuroscience. So let me show you another more bizarre. This is human to human. Human to human is still understandable, in the sense that our ego doesn't get hurt. This is human to rat. This real world, it's not a joke. Human to rat. Human to rat means this guy decides, I'll just show you. This guy decides that I now want to move this rat's tail. And he thinks that I want to move the rat tail, and the rat, without rat's volition, the rat will move its tail. So I'll show you the video, and after around, okay, let me show you the video. After 10 seconds you will see a green light here, and then the rat's tail will move. Green light means that he's thought of moving the light. You will see a green light, you will again see after 40 seconds, 30 seconds, there will be a green here just to indicate that he's thought of moving the rats. You see the green and then see the rat's tail. This coupling is from man to, again, no magic in that sense. Magic is happening, but no magic in that sense. What's happening is, as soon as I know that as soon as I look at a screen and I see some object, some part of my brain activates. That much I know. So I am not looking anywhere. As soon as I look at the screen, that part of the brain activates and it's captured here. That goes to the rat's brain, and we have already put probes into the rat's brain exactly where it moves the tail. So as soon as I look at the screen, this part of the brain activates, it goes to the rat's brain, rat's tail moves. It's amazing. This is no longer science fiction. This is 100% correlated. Meaning it's 100%. Every time he wants to move the rat's tail, he can move it. So no ifs and buts. So that's first. Technology is improving every single day, which is helping us control, look at our brain, go deeper, etc. Second part is explosion in kinds of people who are getting into brain science. The best brains now are going into neuroscience. The best computer scientists, the best data miners, the best, all kinds of people are. The quality, what they are saying, the quality of people getting into brain science or neuroscience is exploding. The best brains are going. And you should ask, for example, I know some of my friends who are the best computer scientists, they're all in now neuroscience. Third, real world implications. All kinds of articles you are reading nowadays. If you do this video game, your brain will improve. If you do that, that will improve. If you do these kinds of puzzles, that will improve. Lot of things are happening. Every single day you are reading these articles. And how are they finding out is through peering into the brain and seeing what significant changes are happening to these people, what synapses are getting created, etc. What changes are happening, long lasting. And they are beginning to see some long lasting changes in some activities. We will come to that a little later. But the fact is these are true now. Suppose you know that these activities will help your brain be a little more sharper in office here. Why will you not use it? Or your team's brains will be sharper. Or your brain will last 10 more years in being able to compute some stuff. Yes, no. Extremely important, because this is what it is. The closest you have to what you are is your brain. New frontier. That's why you're seeing across the world governments are now funding. And what Obama in his recent speech says, unlocking the mystery of the 3 points of matter that sits between our ears. And they're pumping in money. And US is in the forefront, but even Germany, a lot of companies in Europe are also in the forefront. And people who will discover more, increasingly they will start not sharing also. It's possible. And the next few decades are going to be the decades of neuroscience. This is the age of neuro. Just like after 1900s, it was the age of atom. It changed the world, even now. A nuclear power, atomic power, etc., etc. Now every school student knows about the atomic hypothesis. Yes, no. Just 150 years back it was not. Now it seems such a common thing here. Every student, even a child of standard 6 will know that things are made of molecules, molecules are made of atoms, atoms are made of protons, neutrons, electrons, etc. Yes, no. Similarly, they are predicting that in 10 years, every single school student will also start knowing about what now very few people know about our human brain. What is it composed of? It's so obvious that it's composed of this, it's composed of wiring. It's so obvious that if I do this activity, my brain will not work well, etc., etc. Or I'm impairing my brain, etc., etc. So basic neural literacy is essential, let alone for leaders. It's essential for anyone. And the sooner you get to know, the better, because there are a lot of implications. First, because it's a new field, all kinds of scamsters are also entering into the field because they want to use, just like strategy, innovation, all the words are used in every damn thing. So neuro is getting used in everything. Everything. So the first people want to milk it. So lot of wrong also you will read, lot of right things also you will read, etc., etc. So it's important for you to shift out reality from fiction. But one fact is very clear. We will start to learn a lot about our human brain in the next 3 decades. And every single day we are learning deeper and deeper things. Right now we know a lot about just the motor aspects, very mechanical aspects of brain. We don't know the deeper aspects as to what makes creativity, someone really creative, or what makes somebody act really weird and very angry, etc. We are getting hints of those, but increasingly we will get to know that. Because in the end, everything is wiring and firing happening in the brain. Just like you guys are not surprised if a chess program can beat Vishwanathan Anand. Yes or no? Today's world will not get surprised. Similarly, in tomorrow's world, we'll not be surprised when we know that, okay, we know how we get angry. and what all are coming into play in a very mechanical sense, in the sense of wiring. Okay. So part one, the basics of neuroscience. I would like, this is the basic vocabulary. Today I'll just write it down so that it's very obvious for you. Human brain, when they talk about hemispheres, we have two parts, right brain and the left brain. They're actually distinct, and they are connected by a thick wire. So we have two parts. There are people who live even when the entire left part is taken away or the right part is taken away due to disease. So we definitely have two parts, hemispheres. And practically 100 years back, that was about the only fact known to us. And this wrinkled thing is like a paper wrinkled up. It's the outer layer, and this is the what we. So this is called the cortex. Whenever you hear about cortex, this is the outer layer, and this is what has the highest concentration of neurons. And when we say prefrontal, one of the other things you will keep hearing is prefrontal cortex. This is what makes us human. Prefrontal cortex is this part of the brain. This is very thick in us, this forehead. So this is called prefrontal cortex. Cortex and prefrontal. The nomenclature makes no sense in neuroscience. In the labs when I went there this time, I asked them, so some of the names make no sense. And they themselves said that names don't make any sense because it was like open season, it's like Wild West. Everybody went in and started naming their own way. So names, they don't make any sense because they have got stuck, you will be using these names only. You will not change it. It's just like the QWERTY keyboard. That's how it was. So prefrontal cortex is very important. That makes us human. And you can see that lighting up whenever you are doing some serious problems and serious thinking, which others can't do, which animals can't do. We'll come to that a bit. There are 4 lobes, 4 parts. They are very distinct. 4 parts. These are called lobes. And the 4 lobes are, one is the occipital lobe, which is behind. Almost all animals also have this because anybody who needs vision has that, so that got built. Occipital lobe. Then there is parietal lobe. Parietal lobe is this blue one. Parietal lobe is for spatial. You know how where are you in 3D, and spatial attention and space. Your brain deciphers where you are in space. Then frontal lobe is the front part, which is what makes us human, which is language, planning, and thinking about poetry, etc., etc. And temporal lobe is the temporal part, which is where your temple is. This is memory. Lot of parts of our memory, because if the lobes, any damage happens to one of these lobes, these things definitely suffer. You can't have a vision if you don't, occipital lobe, you have a tumor, or you can't have spatial thing. So we have learned a lot from people whose brains were diseased and post-mortem and then figured out. So these are 4 big lobes. Anybody who wants to know, you will keep reading about these. That's why these are important terms, these 4 lobes. Occipital, parietal, frontal, and temporal. Okay, broadly. Okay, the side view of a brain, and then you will hear sometimes like it's cut and you see a middle view, just so that you hear the terms. You will keep reading these in the newspapers. So then the left hemisphere, usually the left hemisphere for almost 99.99% of us, we have language. If left hemisphere gets damaged, language definitely gets damaged, portions. And right hemisphere is usually attention and spatial. A lot of what we talked about the lobes, those lobes, right part is very important for a spatial thing. Similarly, front part of our brain, back part is perception. Perception is intuitive, the vision and all are for perception. So broadly scientists say back part is for perception, front part is for action, volition and action through volition. So these are broadly so that you know the lay of the land. Then a lot of articles talk about dorsal and ventral. Dorsal means the top, like a reptile is walking, a reptile is crawling on the ground. Dorsal is the top part of the body and the belly is the ventral part. So a lot of the modern terms will have ventral added. Ventral, as soon as you say ventral, it means in the lower part. Then there is something called cortical, which is top, which is deliberate, which is what makes us human, and subcortical, which are the brains evolved like this. So the lower levels are automatic. It's like animals respond automatic. That's why this system is automatic in us. This is what suddenly makes us respond quickly. You see a snake, you jump, etc. You don't have to think. All those are in the automatic places. Okay, so there's a lot of regional specialization in the brain, and brain is always firing. Yeah. Amygdala is this. Amygdala is for emotions. Emotions. We'll come to that later. Amygdala is for fear and emotions. We'll come to that. Very important part of our social behavior. Now there's regional specialization. Now increasingly we are finding out all these things we used to hear. We only use 10% of our brain, etc., etc. All wrong. Completely wrong. All our neurons are always firing. All our neurons. There's a base level of firing even when you are asleep. All our 100 billion neurons are always firing. So all these are all old. These are no longer any valid statements. No, not even non-serious people use it. Okay, quick. So memory, what lobe was it? No, the lobes, 4 lobes. Memory? Yes. Planning? Frontal lobe. This is frontal lobe. Okay, and memory is here. Spatial? Parietal lobe. Lobes are the 4 lobes. Okay, and vision? Occipital. So this if you know, you're great. You're done. You'll understand at least 70% of the mainstream articles. Okay, so this was what we covered. Okay, again we are touching a bit of neuroscience, and then we'll come to leadership. Very, very important aspects of leadership happening. Okay, this is the most important part of the brain. This is the wiring. These are the cells of our brain. These are the basic, or in whatever in your chips you call it, whatever the basic firing blocks, zeros and ones. These are the computational parts of our brain, and this is called neuron. Neuron has a cell body, normal cell, a cell body. Neuron, there are many types of neurons in our brain, but at the basic level, the structure is the following. Neurons are wires which generate electricity, and there are 100 billion of these. 100 billion. 100 billion is a huge number. We only know the complete mechanism of only worms, which are very simple worms, which are 300 or 400 or 500. We have 100 billion. Each of these wires is joining 10,000 other wires. It's hugely the most complicated machinery. So what is this single piece? This has a cell body, and for IT it's very important because this is completely a network diagram in the brain. It's a very complicated network diagram. All the brain parts are electrical objects. These pass electricity, that's all. And through electricity they pass information. So there's an input part which are called, there's an output. The electricity signals go output, and the output parts are called axons. The output wires are called axons. Where you send out the signal from your computer, those are called axons. Very well designed. And the inputs are called dendrites. And this only happens one way. You don't have signals the other way. It's almost like your wiring diagram. You will get information through dendrites and you will send it through axons. It can't happen the other way. It's as clear wiring as that. So these are the basic structures of the neuron. Very simple wiring mechanism. This is a cell body. There are dendrites which picks up information from somebody else and gives it to somebody else. So this is a beautiful structure, and the more we are knowing, we are amazed how this operates. And these neurons are in our brain, 100 billion, are our lifelines to reality. Yes or no? This is what makes us touch reality outside. The way they correspond, the way they talk to each other, and the way they make sense of the outer world. And these are the beautiful objects which do that. And These are extremely highly energy consuming. They consume our bodies 30%, 20 to 30% of oxygen is consumed by our brain. And oxygen, and then you need glucose, and then the reaction and you get energy. Very, very high consuming structure. It takes lot of energy. That's why when you are tired after a hard day's work, you don't want to do crossword puzzles here. You want to go and see a Govinda movie or something, right? Yes, no, because it's very consuming. To think is a consuming business. And the firing takes a lot of energy and glucose. You have to hunt another animal and eat it to think again. That's why in nature it's we don't like thinking a lot. Grey matter are the axons. Whenever somebody talks, what is grey matter? And grey matter is the neurons and white matter are the axons. Axons, all the wires are bundled. All the neurons wires bundled so that your wiring is it's like internet cabling. All the wires you cable together. The output wires are cabled nicely, and those are the white matter, which are the axons. Beautiful wiring. If you are interested in electrical engineering, then brain is the most amazing electrical engineering field. It's entirely electricity out there. So brain, the entire story of our life is neurons talking to each other. That's why the static picture is not important. In any network, it's like the neuroscientists say that if you know everything about the enemy tanks, where they are, would you understand anything about enemy's intentions? You might not. But if you knew everything happening between them, the phone calls and conversations happening, you will get a sense whether they are about to attack us or not. So network means the interaction, not the physical parts. So brain is always chattering, and the entire neuroscience is how are they chattering with each other here? Which part is chatting with which part, what are they doing, which part is friends with which part, etc. And one of the quotations they have is neurons which fire together, wire together. So it's like teaming in leadership. People who fire together, wire together. People who sit together in cafeteria and talk to each other become friends, and then when they join in projects, they might know better, etc., etc. So the entire story is about our neurons, 100 billion neurons chatting with each other, and how they do it efficiently, etc., etc. And what is creativity? So, okay, axon, neurons, okay. So a quick bit more of science, because you will hear a bit. One neuron receives a signal, then it sends the signal to the other neurons. And it sends the signal, and between two neurons, they don't touch each other. They don't touch like in wires. Wires touch each other, and electricity flows completely. Here what happens is electricity flows, but it flows through something very special happening, for which Ramon Kayal won the Nobel Prize, was the following. This is the electrical signal of one neuron, and this is the axon. It fires the signal, and then there are chemicals here, which are ions, charged ions, which are released and they go here. And it then starts firing again. So why it's a different topic. Why did nature choose chemicals to pass on the electricity from one piece to another? There are huge advantages. Nature tunes a lot of electricity then, etc., etc. But the fact is that it's entirely electrical system. Okay, so this is one wire, this is another wire. In real life, in normal life, when we have electricity, you have wire joining a wire. In the brain also this should be true, right? If it's all electricity, all the wires are firing. But what nature has done is there's a small gap. That's called synapse, that gap. And instead of sending the electric zap, it sends a chemical, which is electric chemical, meaning ion. It sends, and that slowly goes here and then starts the electricity again. And why? Because of various reasons. It's a complicated reason, because then you can, if you have three different types of chemicals, suppose, three different types of, one chemical can increase the firing, one can slow down the firing, one can double the firing, etc. in simplistic form. Then nature has more command then. This neuron can say, now increase firing. I am sending you 5 volts or whatever, 5 amperes, make it 7. Then you can give another, or it can say dampen it. I am sending you this signal, another says, let me dampen it. Then you have more command. So we'll come, that's a completely different thing. But the fact is, everything is signal. If anywhere you touch something, this electricity flow stops. For example, whenever we say that our brain is not working, or somewhere somebody's brain is not working, somewhere these electric pathways are getting hampered. For example, if these chemicals are taken away, no electricity will pass. Or if I increase the chemicals, more electricity might pass, etc. etc. So these chemicals are called neurotransmitters. Just write down, neurotransmitters. Extremely important because every single article you will read has these words. And these are lots of neurotransmitters. Some neurotransmitters you will keep hearing are called serotonin, dopamine, etc. These two you definitely will hear. These are in layman's language sometimes called feel-good chemicals. That is, whenever you are happy, neurons are firing, you will see these chemicals being generated and thrown. So those parts of the brain are getting active. Whenever somebody is depressed, and some of these chemicals, if you might be in short supply in that person's brain, you give those chemicals, a lot of time depression gets solved. The person is no longer depressed. It's as mechanical as that in lots of cases. This is just to tell you that nature has done a lot of things, but in the end it's all a wiring which is happening to send electrical signals in our brain. Yes, till now? Yeah, and these chemicals are where they are being, these are neurotransmitters, these are being used to convey those actual electrical signals. Okay, so example of one neurotransmitter, anyone? GABA, yes, very good. Example of basic cell of the brain? Neuron, okay, very good. Input wire of that cell? Very good. Everybody is a neuroscientist now. Output wire? Very good. White matter contains axons. Yeah, very good. Cell bodies consume? Yes, yes, absolutely. And action potential is the electrical impulse. That's all, which I did not tell. It's called action potential. Action potential is the electricity moving. Yeah, and you can, and cell circuit is completely electrical circuits where there are AND circuits, OR circuits, all kinds of complicated. This neuron and this neuron exactly have this much voltage, they will fire another neuron, otherwise it won't fire, etc. The circuitry is completely what you find in computers. Exactly the same AND gate, OR gate, logic gates, every single thing is there. You imagine any complicated circuit, the brain circuitry is more complex. And everything is electric circuit. There is no magic there. That's why electrical engineers go into neuroscience. They love neuroscience because you can learn a lot about how to create wiring diagrams there. Okay, the summary: gray matter contains neurons, white matter axons, cell bodies consume glucose and oxygen, neurons communicate electrically and chemically. But in the end, it's electricity. So, till now everybody has understood? Yes, no. This is the basic lay of the land. This much you need to know. And in 10 years, a person in standard 5 will know. It's a guarantee. It's a, Yeah.
These movies where we talk about those samples, some people move like in the case of epilepsy or in case of...
Very good example. Epilepsy is exactly that. Where brain's neurons are firing when it's not required. Epilepsy is exactly that. If you put somebody is having an epileptic seizure, that means that suddenly neurons are firing, and when they should not be. And you will show actually on the equipment which measures electricity, EEG and all, you will see a lot of fire. For whatever reason, the firing is happening. Either a lot of chemicals have gone in, or something has happened, a seizure will come. Those are completely a PhD topics of their own. But you're right, something is happening to the electricity there. And if somebody is depressed, that means some of the neurons you wanted to feel good, they are not firing. And they are not firing because of lack of chemicals or something. You are right, they are not firing. Everything which is happening, your thinking, breathing, emoting, whatever, is due to firing of neurons. If those neurons are not, it's like computer, some parts are some circuits and you remove that, it won't work. Exactly, it's as mechanical as that. As mechanical as that. Even the fact, Acha, just close your eyes and keep a fist here and take your finger and touch your fist. Okay? You could do it, right? So if I remove a small part of your brain, you can't do it. Which is in which lobe? No, which lobe? Parietal lobe, yes. In that parietal lobe, if I take out a small part, parietal lobe, a small part, and if people who have that tumor there, they can't do this. They just don't know. The 3D thing is gone. It's as mechanical as that. Everything you are doing right now is due to some parts of neurons working very well. If I touch some part, you can't hear. If I touch some part, you can't see. If I touch some part, you will never be able to again smile, etc., etc. So it's as mechanical as that. So, okay, so where are we? So, okay, tell me. Yeah, all the time at a base level. At a base level.
And the chemicals who is helping them
Yeah,
to fire.
yeah.
So medically someone is treating someone, that means is it the chemical is the problem or the neuron is the problem?
No, see, in the end it's neurons firing. And what, when I say neurons are firing, I mean at the base level they are firing, but suppose they are firing at this level. And for your hand to move, they need to fire at this level. Somewhere, some circuit should work so that it starts firing at that level. But when you are saying when the brain is not working, those parts of neurons are not firing well. Either due to chemicals or hardware problem. Those neurons are not there. The tumor is there. We'll come to questions a little later. We'll come to questions. But right now, no. Let me, okay, so because this was not the important part. Huh? No, yeah, we'll cancel answer. Okay, so, so, hold on, because I have not even started the talk. This is supposed to be, this was just supposed to be first, this was supposed to be actually 10 minutes, okay? So, where are we? Where are we in the talk? We are in the basic first vocabulary. If you don't understand, you won't understand the talk. So, what is this talk about? This talk is not about the big topics like consciousness and who am I, etc. This talk is about what neuroscience knows really well till now. Knows really well. Not about what is our life all about and where is consciousness residing or where is it that I feel very poetic, etc. So, the leadership, in really leading schools, they are saying that there are 4 key networks in our brain. What are these networks? When I showed you fMRI, remember fMRI? When I showed you fMRI scans, when you are resting, for example, I said just sit, relax, meditate for 1 minute, relax, chill, and then I look at your brain and brain scans. There are 15 regions which are correlated and when they are firing. That is, when this is firing, that is firing and that is firing. If you cut the brain into say some 1000 parts, then if this fires, I am seeing that fires and that fires. If this fires more, I am seeing that fires and that, etc., etc. There are 15 regions which are together firing as teams. Yes, no, you got it? There are 15 correlated regions which are firing. Yes? Out of the, yes, no? Yes. You got 15 correlated. So these are resting states. The resting state diagram, there are around 15 states which are firing. Out of these 15, 4 are important for leadership. 4 right now. Because 4 we understand. What are these 4? These 4 networks are the following. One is called the default mode network. Default network or default mode network. Second is called the reward network, and this is from a recent HBR, but this is the theory in neuroscience. Third is affect network, to do with emotions. and the fourth is the control network. Okay, so these four you should know in management. Default network, these are the important networks of resting state. Now let's come to default mode network. Default mode, out of all the 15 networks, this is the only network when you are completely relaxed. What was the theory? The theory was, as soon as you start doing something in life, neurons should fire more. Because brain is to grapple with that activity. Yes or no? As soon as I see him talking more, I will know his neurons are working more. And other parts of the body, because he needs more oxygen, all other parts of the brain which are controlling his lips, etc., all are working more. Yes, no? As soon as I see somebody running fast, I know his heart is working more. As soon as you do any activity versus you are sitting idly, your brain has to work more. This is the only network where when you are relaxed, it works more. When they look into your head, when you are relaxed, it's firing more. So scientists wonder that why should it be? Because it's a costly affair. When you are doing nothing, why should some parts of the brain which consume a lot of oxygen and a lot of food, why should it work more? In animals it does not happen. There is no logic. Yes, no. There is no logic. When you are doing nothing, why should one part of the correlated brain, one circuit work more? Now they are finding evolutionary there might be a lot of advantages. And when you are doing nothing means that you are getting no external stimuli. You are getting no external data, external stimuli, still the brain is working more. So what should happen? Why should it be? Now people are saying without external chatter. Now they are saying that this evolutionary was a huge thing for mankind. Why? Because this circuit allows you to do what ifs based on all the information you have right now. So what the brain basically seems to be doing is, with my existing data, can I start playing around with it? So for example, when you are in college, seeing a boring lecture and doodling, daydreaming, this network is most active. All other networks are subdued. So what scientists are saying is, this network is extremely essential for one of the key human activities called creativity. Creativity gets on, or this network, when the body knows or the brain knows there is no external danger. As soon as there is external stimuli, the body or our brain has to deal with that. If it has to deal with that, then a lot of attention is on other things outside. Creativity only happens when it does not have to deal with the immediate. And it had a huge evolutionary advantage. Because suddenly people who are daydreaming, or your brain is now seeing data in a different way, or doing what ifs, or seeing if I were like this, or if I do this again, that will happen, or if I am this Amitabh Bachchan, I will do this, etc., etc. All what ifs in an awake state. All what ifs in an awake state lead to creativity, lot of creativity and innovation, and it is refreshing your pool of hypotheses. That's what scientists say. Whatever your hypothesis about the world, how you understand the world, suddenly you see in a new way. We'll come to dream later, a bit later. But this is when you are awake. Resting state is when you are awake. When you are awake completely, it's like you are rested, you are doing nothing. A meditation kind of. Meditation, one of the ways in which you are invoking it. When you are awake, you are completely letting free yourself, no external chatter. Then this network, these are actually computation engines. These engines are running extra hard. And apparently these require no external chatter happening for getting invoked. Because as soon as there is external chatter, all other networks start firing. And this completely retreats back. It's like in office, your boss gives you an urgent work. Suddenly your daydreaming has to stop here. Yes or no? Or in college, teacher looks at you and says, okay, now you tell me the answer. It has to stop because your body is saying, your brain is saying, hold on, real world there's a danger now. My creativity has to stop. That's what actually happens. That's what actually happens. And these are the aha, okay, very, very interesting. And these are the aha moments. Okay, so let me, okay, some of the management implications, before we come to meditation, some of the implications for managers there. Implications for managers is even at a team level, for you to have a creative, what they are saying across the world, senior leaders, for us to invoke creativity, it's very clear that we have to first stop external chatter. That is, that as soon as then an external environment comes in, your creativity stops by sheer logic. For example, if you send people off for an off-site or a strategic planning workshop, and you want them to think creatively, that's your intention. As soon as you call that person on cell phone and says, "Iska kya ho gaya, dekh liya," khatam. Your creativity is gone, that teams. So increasingly they are realizing that if we are doing any creative activity like long-term planning, like this, etc., it's even better if you, that's why offsites work a lot. That's why, for example, Microsoft or even Steve Jobs, he used to take his top 100 people for 2 weeks, no cell phones, nothing. Why do they do that? Because that's the only way you can invoke this. Because if you get external chatter, by sheer logic, that circuit will go down. Because external chatter means you have to now deal with that danger. That's hardwired. As soon as you are seeing the line, everything else has to be diverted. Your poetry has to stop here. You can't do poetry or painting in the wall here. So that's what happens. So you can't do operational work and creative stuff at the same time. Yes, no, makes sense? Yeah? Okay, so what? Phone? My phone is on flight mode. Okay, so let's do one thing. Okay, so let me do one thing. I had an interesting discussion around, because this default mode network might be the most important thing. There are other networks, reward network, control network. For those who are interested, I can share later. But for this, I want everybody to sit straight first. Okay, so what I will do is, because this requires some. Okay, I'll put a. I'll put a 2-minute timer. All of you close your eyes and just do whatever deep breathing, whatever, settle down. Let's try to invoke our default mode network. Okay, so I'll tell you when the 2 minutes start, and I'll tell you when it ends. Okay. Okay. Yeah, starts. the question, okay. So the question is the following. Think of last time you had a creative idea. Whenever you had, in the last 1 year, 2 years, what are creative idea? As leaders, we need to have creative ideas. Yes, no? Even in a personal life. For example, let's assume the creative idea was, oh, I thought I need to buy that flat and it went 10 times up. That was great. Or I did my MBA. Oh, I had a great idea. I did that. Or I went to. Anytime, last time you had a creative idea, which was very, quite useful for you. It proved quite useful for you. Personal, professional, you will not share. Just write down, think. Anytime. If not in last 1 year, last 2 years. If not last 2 years, last 3 years. Or both. Create any, yourself. It can be yourself, your team, whatever. You had a creative idea. That is the question. Just think of any creative idea. It's a different matter if you can't think of, that's even more introspective, but think of any time you had a creative idea. Think about it. I'm just asking you. Think about an idea, you think, wow, what a creative, meaningful creative idea. Just like the Twitter guy says, I got a creative idea of Twitter when I saw my child. So if somebody asks you, a junior comes and says, sir, did you have a great creative idea sometime? So what is the example you give? Kind of. Okay? Anything, it can be personal also. Oh, I did great and that worked well for me. Etc. Okay? You have thought at least one? Yes, no? Okay. So the interesting part is the following. A creative idea, and this is a monk asked in US. Okay. The creative part is, creative idea is an event. In event means in physics, an event has to happen in space and time. Yes or no? Yes. So the question is, what were you doing when you had that creative idea? Okay, try to remember. It was an important creative idea, you will remember it. What were you doing when you were having that creative idea? For example, it can't be that I had creative idea in 2012. That's not the event. Event is very precise. Just like the Twitter guy said, I was with my child I took him to the playground in the swing. When I saw the swing, it said, oh, this is so simple. When a child without instruction manual can look at the swing, I thought my software should be like that, etc. What were you doing when you had that creative idea? That is the question. That is the important question. Okay? No. What were you doing? I want a specific. It's like physics. Specific. I was watching TV or I was going for a walk. That's what I want. Just write down. Whatever your creative idea was. What were you doing when you had that creative? It could be watching TV, it could be talking to your wife, it could be running, watching a movie, whatever. Each one would have a different one. Yes? Okay. Anyone? Just tell me that. No stories, nothing. What your idea was. What were you doing? Yeah. What were you doing? Anything. Just quick.
So, one of my previous organizations.
No, fast. 8 line. What was you doing? Were you chatting? Were you in the cafeteria? Were you walking? Were you seeing TV? Were you fighting? What?
We have migrated our
Were you cooking? What were you doing? Quick, simple.
Where was the requirement from the other department?
Okay, example. What were you doing?
I was just roaming on the roof of
Okay, roaming on the roof of his house. That when he got what?
I was driving.
Driving. Okay, what? Anyone else? Yes. Taking bath. Yes. While driving. Yes. Having beer. Yes. Traffic, etc. The important thing to note is that none of you, very few of you had an idea like we do it in office. Let's have a brainstorming meeting 2 to 3 years. None of us had this idea in a structured way. Yes or no? None of us had this idea. It would be while walking on a beach, it will be while taking a bath, it would be, and these are all important ones. We are asking something which was really important to you over the last 1 or 2 years. But what do we do when we want great ideas from our team? We set up a meeting. 3 to 4 tomorrow we'll brainstorm. That's not real world. Real world is different. That's what the neuroscientists are saying. You reflect. When did you yourself or your teams got great ideas? That's where Steve Jobs' genius is. That's where these guys' geniuses are. They create an environment where great ideas, whenever they come, and they will come whenever. They will come whenever, and usually it is when default mode network is on. When you are no longer getting disturbed by externals. When you are walking on the beach and your brain is processing existing environment and looking and twisting and turning in different ways. Those of you who have done crossword puzzles know that. You suddenly get the answer when you are doing something else. Yes or no? You are stuck in something, you suddenly get the or somebody's name. You don't remember. Suddenly something else you are doing, suddenly you remember that name. All those are default mode network, and we do completely opposite. So default mode network, if you can invoke in your team, in yourself, etc., it requires that's a completely different topic. How do we invoke default mode networks in team? But at least in theory, you should know why you are ensuring that you don't have creative ideas. At least that much awareness should be there. That's what neuroscience is. So this is an extremely important network. And even at a team level. That's why in offsites, when you're asking people to go for training programs, don't ask them to come back to office and again do work here. Every single workshop I go, even creative problem solving workshop which I take, these guys, poor guys, are leaving and going back to office here to work. What's the use? It makes no sense. They're just doing a tick mark then. It has nothing to do with creativity. Okay, so AHA experience, okay, there are a lot of things. Okay, 3 things which people say really helps, and these are leading companies, etc. They are saying that 3 things are meditation, which is meditation not in any religious way, but meditation 15 minutes in just 8 weeks. 15 minutes, 8 weeks in the morning actually does a lot of changes, physical changes in your brain. In fMRI you can see these changes. 15 minutes, 8 weeks. You can do longer, you can do more, whatever. 15 minutes, 8 weeks, it seems to be a very, very good indicator in labs. Second is sleep. 7 to 8 hours of sleep is mandatory for keeping the brain in good order. Unless you are an outlier, assume you are not an outlier. 1 in million can sleep less than 7 hours. But most of us are not, and 7 to 8 hours is a must to keep brain in order. Third is physical exercise, which actually changes brain structure, not just body structure, brain structure. And meditation across the world now, to open up the default mode networks, you are seeing this happen. Increasingly this will happen. Nowadays, at least in India, I have seen some offices which have quiet rooms, floor rooms, etc., unused. They are used for some other things. They are used for operational meetings. Unused. But increasingly you will see it because it is a huge competitive advantage. And we will mimic the Western companies which are doing this well. And meditation, quiet rooms, etc. These are real world. Okay. Implications, we did that. Second, okay, this now I'll quickly run through. Quickly run through. Okay, so reward network. Reward network are networks which are the last mile networks. Anytime you like something, in the end some neurons are jumping. If you like a great book, you read a great book, you like literature, etc., in the end it has to invoke some neurons. You like spending time with your friends, in the end it has to invoke, etc., etc. What if you are not doing that activity, but it gets invoked? Even then you will feel pressure because it's as mechanical as that. What are you doing? In the end, the last mile these neurons are getting, pleasure neurons are getting, whatever neurons are getting, and you feel that. What if I don't do all that? It's like magic. I only touch this. You'll still feel real good? Yes or no? Magic pill? Actually it's true. In the rats, again our friend the rat, what they do, we can't do it in humans obviously. In the rats, in the neurons, some neurons which are responsible for us feeling very good, and there are serotonin, all the feel good chemicals which we talked about, feeling very good. In the rats, for example, if we invoke that particular, bypass everything else. Suppose rat likes food a lot. Rat likes she-rats a lot. Rat likes games a lot, etc. And then it enjoys. Suppose we don't give all that. Just give prods to that part. Will rat like this more than other things? Obviously yes, because you're short-circuited. Yes or no? In logical way. So let's look at this.
The video clip shows a rat with an electrode implanted in the lateral hypothalamus. The animal can freely move about the cage. By accident, the animal presses the lever. As a result, a weak electrical stimulation is passed through the electrode. The electrical current activates the reward system, which in turn reinforces the rat's behavior. The rat presses the lever continuously at a constant rate, at the expense of other vital behaviors such as eating and drinking.
And it will keep going till it dies. And you are talking about rats? Humans do it. Humans do it. There are now lots of cases where kids have continuously played video games and died. Of famish, meaning of not eating food. These are real cases. Addictive behaviors are you are invoking those neurons directly. This is not volition, it's not thinking. You have bypassed the circuit. That's what addictive behavior is. Even you know that this is bad for me, but you will directly go and do that. You have no control because you have bypassed every single thing, etc. These are really happening. And motivators. What are motivators? What do you want? What do you want? We are not talking manipulatively, you should know the theory. You want that as soon as people come in to the office, they should like the place. Yes or no? They should like the place. They should feel like, I don't know why, but I want to work in this place. What is happening is somewhere some neurons are firing. They say as soon as I come to this place, it's like going to a golden temple. As soon as I go inside that place, I feel peaceful. Some people say, some friends. Some neurons are getting fired. They don't know, it's not logical. Some neurons are getting fired. For example, okay, let me ask you a question first. My toe touches a thorn. Okay. I think I am getting big hints. Okay, my toe touches a thorn. My toe touches a thorn. At what speed do I know that my toe has touched the thorn here? A, B, C. A, B, C. Just write down A, B or C. Okay. Okay. So motivators. What are the most common motivators used? Let's come to motivators. Usual suspects. Money, prestige, power. You feel that to motivate my people, I need to give money, I need to give prestige, I need to give power. In the end, all these actually, what you are doing is invoking those neurons. Some people saying money, that gets invoked more, some people prestige, some people power, those are easy. But, if suppose you knew there were other variables which were, it's like pink walls here. You think that these kinds of software engineers love pink walls and you keep pink walls in your office here. As soon as they come, they will not even know why. But they feel, this office mein bada maza aata hai. Would you not like to do that? Obviously you would like to do that. Yes or no? Yeah. So one of the things, for example, how many of you want to know the correct answer of this? Almost all. Almost all. And the correct answer is C, by the way. Correct answer is C. It's and only in the last 15 years we have realized the speed of the impulse is around 90 kilometers per hour. Very, very slow, but it seems fast for us because the distances are very less, etc. Very slow, it's counterintuitive, it's not very super fast. 100 years back we used to think it's almost speed of light. Okay, so, okay, generation Y. This is what is a recent article. Increasingly the youngsters who are joining, will their motivators be different or not? As senior leaders, you need to know that. Because you want to invoke those neurons here, where they feel happy to work. Yes, no. And these neurons are no longer going to be only the ones we have known. For example, they don't want hierarchy, they don't want, their need for stability is lower, their need for innovation is higher, their need for process culture is much lower, they don't like that, they want risk, etc. Their need for external parity is more, not internal parity. They want to compare themselves with friends I go out here. What car is he driving, what car am I driving? Not internal, I don't care, etc. etc. What it just says is, if you are more savvy as a leader, suddenly you can play with lot more variables. And that's what game-changing leaders always do. Curiosity, etc., etc. Why do some people stick with some forms here, even if it's not the highest paying forms? So this is what is the leadership which is going to be implication for leadership. Curiosity, equity, respect, etc. Whatever. These are not important. What is important is you sit with your team and see what are the variables here which we can invoke and which go deeper than what they are themselves saying. Yes or no? Very, very important. So this is called the reward network. Huge, lot of studies going around this. Yeah. Okay. Then the executive function. All of us know that. I'll just quickly say that this is what separates us from all other animals. And executive function. Okay, this is what separates us. No animal can do this test. You can. Just give me the answer. Yeah, anybody got? Yeah, what? Yeah, so whatever the answer is, what is helping you do is your prefrontal cortex or the control network. You had to have lot of attention to do this test. And your brain was working extra hard in one portion called the control network. If your control network was not working well, you can't do this test. That's what you are invoking when you are doing attention, etc., etc. This is what makes us different. Or let me give you another. All of you know the spelling of democracy? Spell it fast. Huh? Done it? Now really try harder doing it. Spell it backwards. Do it. Yeah. Suppose your promotion was dependent on this. Your brain will have to work really hard. Yeah? Yes, no. So this is called the control network. And control network is required in a lot of different kinds of problems you will have in office, where a lot of logic, etc., etc. is required. This is about that network. So we'll come to that, and again, without executive function or the control network, executive function system is adrift. You are in the whims and fancies of the world. So I'll just go faster, etc. Prefrontal cortex, appropriate action you can only take through control network, unconscious. Okay. The last is the affect network. Just write down affect network. Affect network is to do with emotion and emotional states. Third is control. There are four only. One is default network, and second, and the fourth is the control network. And this is about emotions and mental state. Again, different portions of neurons work. About your mental state, you feeling happy, sad, etc., etc. And we are physiological beings. We are feeling beings which think, not thinking beings which feel, which are very, very different. Our entire model is different in terms of evolution. And for example, we are physiological. Thinking and feeling are entwined and we are trying to tease them apart. For example, when we have won a match, we are feeling very happy. Our entire body language is different. The human brain actually wants to expose the maximum surface area of our body to the world. And tell the world that I am the entity which has done this, you should look at me and see that I have done it so that you can give me more rewards and more food and more shelter, more clothing, etc. Versus when you have lost a match. You completely shrink. You completely, even you take photographs of Srishant when he's got a wicket versus when he's in the jail. Completely, every time, even us, everyone behaves like this. It's we shrink and reduce the surface area, saying that nobody should see me in this state. Otherwise, you will not give me food, shelter, clothing, etc. So we actually are physiological machines. We have emotions, etc. A lot of evolutionary advantages. We are the only animal which can think about feelings of others. And how does the other feel? Due to mirror neurons, etc. There's a lot of other neurons which are helping us do that. We instantly know when another person is happy, sad, etc. etc. Even animals do that, but we know it in a much deeper way. And we can even manipulate that, etc. And amygdala, like somebody said, is one important component which helps us do that. This works a lot with prefrontal cortex and helps us do that. A lot of psychopaths, when they study their brain, their emotional circuits are impaired. Their emotional circuits are impaired. It's like that machine. If you impair, I can make you really act not normal. Emotional styles can also change. If you have a great subordinate who is emotionally unstable but amazing genius, etc., you can help. There is a lot of neuroscience now which says that some level of plasticity is there, even at team level. You can have emotionally more stable teams, etc., etc. The emotional slide, I'll send you this slides. Don't worry, I'll give it to them. The slides can be sent. This is not being asked in the test also. So, okay. The thing is that these are all neuroscience. These are great neuroscientists who are talking about emotions. We are talking emotions from the neuroscience angle, and we are only able to do this in the last 5 years. Last 5, 6 years, 7 years, because we can now peer and do experiments. And again, a recap: 3 tips to keep our brain well-oiled: exercise, sleep, meditation. Meditation, exercise and cognition. Lot of research is there. When you start reading now newspapers and all, and it's a complex world out there. It's a complex world out there. You want everybody to have, each team can have positive, negative personality traits. You want as many positive traits as possible to deal with this complex world. And the more you have in command some tools to do that, better. At a personal level, at a team level. Yeah? So all 4 networks, and the beauty is out of many one. Just like our brain, millions of components are coming together and working seamlessly to give that entity called I. For us, that is what your aim is in real life when you lead a team. All the parts which wire together, fire together. So all the parts come together in a distributed system, and as leaders and managers, we can learn a lot from our neighbor here, not even neighbor, our own this plumbing. And the more we keep this plumbing as clean as possible, the better. And with that, what we'll do is, like I committed to Giri, that we'll end this program by getting your serotonin and dopamine levels up. Yeah? So we'll encourage some neurotransmitters. So all of you, we'll have this. Okay. So all of you, please stand up and stand up. Okay. You distributed that paper. Okay. Shitish, just distribute. Just distribute. Okay. Okay. So this. So dopamine, serotonin, all are feel-good chemicals, neurotransmitters. So we'll figure out whether, okay, this work. This is not a test. This is easier. Right? Okay. So okay. Anyone? Yeah, there are more. Okay, just pass it. Okay. Okay. I want all you to stand and rub your hands first. So keep your paper. Rub your hands first. Actually, warm hands make you happier. Warm hands, for whatever evolutionary reason, your signals, if you now shake somebody's hand, you feel more friendly towards that person. Actually, it's okay. And widen your lips like the Joker. Widen your lips as far as possible. Yeah, widen your lips. Okay, as soon as you widen your lips, your mood changes. It's a guarantee. It's as physiological. Okay, now hum to yourself loudly so that your vocal cords are okay. Just test. Okay. Okay, hum. Your vocal cords are okay. Your neurons are firing which run the vocal cord. Okay. Okay, everybody tested your vocal cords. Neurons are firing well. Okay. So now I'll play a song. This actually song, no, and you guys sing along as slowly as possible. And this is a Gorilla song from a movie called Gambler. And this song actually, a lot of it was edited out. And so these are new lyrics, but actually they had to censor a lot of lyrics which were to do with capitalism, etc. This was a very nice song. But anyways, this is the song. So try to sing along with it. Okay? Yes? Okay, this is a very serious song. Okay. Yeah. Let's see. Oh, it's not working. Give me another. Yeah, just a minute. Yeah, this is a song by. And that Vola becomes called. They are called. Just a minute.
लेकिन हम अपना किस्सा सुनाना शुरू करें ना तो आप लोग हमें बीच में रोकना रहेंगे और स्टॉप दैट कहकर टोकना रहे। मैं अपने सर पे आकर की कसम करता हूँ कि मैं जो कुछ भी कहूँगा सच कहूँगा, सच किसी का कुछ भी नहीं कहूँगा, लेकिन मैं जब किसी से कुछ कहने जाता हूँ तो वो लोग मुझे बोल देते हैं चाहे दहेज में दे मुझे सोने की कार या आके कोई दे दे मुझे हीरो का, पर शादी के लिए मैं तो कच्चा हूँ, अभी 100 साल का छोटा बच्चा हूँ। मेरे दर्दों पहले डायपर, चश्मे पर उनके वाइपर, डैडी की टूटे हड्डी, जब खेले वो कबड्डी, मैंने फुटबॉल खेला है, दोनों हैंडों से ट्रेन को धकेला है, उसका दादा सिंह मेरा चेला है, घोड़ों में जाट पे कबेला है। सरकार, बिना पैसे दे दूंगा मैं हर किसी को कार, पेट्रोल भी मिल जाएगा सबको उधर, मुफ्त में मारूंगा मैं रोटी और कबाब, हल में से निकलेगी ठंडी शराब, अब इनकम पे कोई टैक्स नहीं रहेगा और शॉपिंग नोट पे मेरा फोटो छपेगा, इसमें कंपलसरी करने का अभियान होगा, लेटेस्ट फैशन का ड्रेस चड्डी बनियान होगा, कोई भी चुनाव हारा सर मुंडवाएगा सारा, जो देगा जो भी भाषण ना मिलेगा उसे राशन, घर वाली मिलेगी सबको दूंगी, ऑफिसर पहनेंगे अब सिर्फ लूंगी, मुफ्त में ऑपरेशन करेंगे, सरकारी कर्मचारी सब काम करेंगे।
Okay, just sit. Thanks. Just sit. Any question? One or two questions, and then we'll close that. So yeah. Huh? Okay. It was supposed to be a video, funny video, and you were supposed to sing along, and the entire purpose was to ensure that some serotonin levels and dopamine levels in the room go up, and you release. And it's very easy to do that in your own offices. And you, in your own offices, you can create a mood which is very healthy for work, etc., etc. That's what people do that. And some of the networks only work when you are happy and relaxed, and that's why you allow music, etc., after office hours or whatever, so that your default mode networks can operate, where you don't feel threatened. You are only happy when you are not threatened. So that was the only motto, except yeah, okay.
Sir,
Yeah, okay.
I read one article
Yeah,
about.
yeah.
Sir, I read one article about neuroscience. As we know that in networking, there is a client-server model where all clients will make the request to perform a specific task. If the request is accepted by the server, then the client can make the request. The same mechanism is adopted in the brain, and there are some neurons which are having the controlling power over number of neurons, which are known as the superneuron. So I want to know that.
Okay. There is nothing called superneurons in the brain. There is nothing called superneurons. You will not hear. Those are all old terms. Limbic system, superneurons, all these are. So what you will have is control network. What we talked about control network? Control network is called the CEO of the brain. CEO. It's called CEO of the brain. And it's called executive function. So this tries to control, give some order of which you can voluntarily start controlling the way your rest of the brain functions, especially in social interactions. So if I did not show you that slide, but there are people whose brain prefrontal, normal people, very intelligent people, who have prefrontal cortex has a tumor, and suddenly the next day they are behaving completely random. All our thoughts which come, my boss ko gaali de dunga, ye wo, you start doing it. Your control is gone. So you're right in that sense. There is a control network. That's what was the control network. Control network thing is to focus your attention on the important task. You are doing your fun and play, suddenly some tiger is coming. Then your control network has to also get involved to say which danger prioritize and take charge. And if you are impaired, then you might not do it. Yes, that's why reward network, if it gets hijacked, your control network is gone away, and you are starting to just play video game till you die.
So, I have a reward network here.
Okay, thank you. What is
So,
it?
yesterday we announced a competition,
Huh.
which is sponsored by Kaspersky.
Huh.
This involves, 10 people in this room
Huh.
will be selected for a meeting with Sachin Tendulkar. Dinner with Sachin Tendulkar.
Wow.
So,
Huh.
let's see how many
Huh.
people we can reward.
Huh.
Gentlemen from Kaspersky, please come up.
Yeah.
So, they are the guys who are going to keep track of who's going to get to meet. So,
Wow, very good. Very
so
good.
to make it all very
Thanks.
fair and
Thanks.
above board, so I am going to ask you
To
need to
hold?
draw one,
Draw. Okay.
draw one,
Okay.
announce and read out the name. So who gets first? Rajiv.
Rajiv Gupta.
Here one.
Hey, wow. Congratulate. Okay. Very good. Wow.
Come.
Chala, very good.
Draw the next one.
Yeah. Okay.
Congratulations.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Draw.
Okay. You draw.
You have to draw 10, so.
Yeah.
Mr. Sunil Pandey from Mozambique.
Sunil Pandey from Mozambique. Congratulations.
Kartikeya Singh from Karnataka.
Atul, I'm going to ask you to draw one.
Sachin Tendulkar. Yeah.
Nishan Joshi, Innodata India.
Wow.
How many people have you got so far? 5. Okay, 5 more.
Let me. Okay. Yeah.
Come on.
All of
You
us
have to
can
draw
take
one
one.
more.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Nikhil Kumar Nigam. Wow. From
Annuity University. Nikhil Kumar, Annuity University.
Very good. Start.
We need 5 more.
Yeah.
Yeah. What are you doing? Come, somebody draw.
Shubham Bhardwaj
Shubham Bharadwaj.
from William Lee.
Come, Shubham Bharadwaj.
Rahul Yadav, Jubilant.